It is a very different session. First of all, there will be an election this year in 2026. It changes the dynamics. The Premier has resigned, but on top of that, 17 elected members of the CEQ has decided either to leave or not to give it a shot at the next elections. And you have two different teams that have already begun attacking each other. So it is a risky environment for the government itself in terms of public governance. And I think in that context, our role is to be as vigilant as possible, to look after every possible aspect of wasting public funds or making bills that have not been thought over correctly. We have a job to do, and yet we have a job to do in terms of preparing something else than the CAQ, a solid option. We're capable of doing both, I think.
What? James Mennie of the Montreal Gazette is on the line. Jim, I'm sorry. What did he say? I mean, I don't understand
here's the thing. No, here's what's important, Aaron. What's important is, to the untrained ear, that's Paul Saint-Pierre-Plamondon, head of the Parti Québécois, giving us the lowdown on the final National Assembly session before the general election. However, longtime listeners will recognize perhaps Rod Serling introducing an episode of The Twilight Zone. And think about it. Take a step back, okay? Normally we come back, Christmas break, blah, 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 what's on the legislative agenda? You've got a lame duck premier who's not, basically, we don't even know how long he's going to be around because he may stay end of term if he wants to collect his 300 large. He may leave earlier once the new leader's been chosen. You've got the main governing party in something of a turmoil right now because you have two candidates for the leadership and also a leadership, quite frankly, campaign, which I guess I shouldn't be surprised because it's a CAC. I think it's going to be extremely divisive, Aaron. I think you're going to see all kinds of factions emerge from that one big happy family coalition, fictitious, political alternative for Quebec. You have the Quebec Liberal Party, which has, it's on its way to having a leader. It's probably going to be Charles Milliard, but we don't really find out until Valentine's Day. That's when the nomination period winds up. In other words, everything is kind of hanging fire. Everything is it's suspended for the time being because nobody knows what in the heck is going on. Meanwhile, this government, this freaking out, fear-mongering government is proceeding with such legislative greatest hits as the Quebec Constitution, which essentially they're trying to legislate and codify and chisel into stone a lot of the fear-mongering that has been a hallmark of their stay in the National Assembly as government for 8 years. So whether that's so-called protecting identity, so-called protecting the French language, because these things with the CAC's political arithmetic, you cannot enhance the protection of the French language. You cannot enhance the protection of the Quebec identity without diminishing somebody else's language or somebody else's identity. That's the way it's always worked. Yeah. And I find it fascinating as well that we have, talk about a tale of not two cities, but of two Quebecs. I don't know if you saw this afternoon, because there's also hearings go on for Bill 9, which is that nice Jean-François Roberge's attempt to make the odious Bill 21 even more unpalatable, to make it even more of a how can I put it? I can't even use the expression on the radio, but I'll clean it up and say more of a go to hell to Muslims and religiously observant people, and quite frankly, people who don't look like Jean-François Roberge or don't have a last name like Roberge. You have one coverage. You've got former PQ leader Pierre Carpello's Québécois focusing on a lawyer's testimony, saying, "Did you know at the SAAQ, a man can insist he be served by a woman?" And it turns out, you can do that only for the driving test, and you have to have a very good reason. And no, we don't exactly know how many times or how many times this has actually been asked to do. But this lawyer has got her nose out of joint because apparently it's on the books, but you would have that option. The other coverage is that you've got someone like Monsieur Roberge being accused by the Quebec Federation of Municipalities that represents 80% of the population of Quebec, Aaron, of imposing ridiculous, expensive, time-wasting rules about banning prayer from city streets, making sure that, you just can't ban it. You've got to have a city council resolution banning it on a case-by-case basis. And they're pointing out, saying, okay, so basically if there's a funeral procession, do we go after that? I mean, once again, nothing more about Bill 21 and nothing more about Bill 9 that is more performative, fear-mongering, xenophobic nonsense, which, quite frankly, is the CAC brand. But once again, we have to, they will try, I guess, and flush as much of this rubbish down the pipe as they can before they get drop-kicked out of office in October. But all that said, welcome to, I think, an even more petty-minded, xenophobic, Anglophobic, immigrant-hating Quebec, at least in terms of its government, between now and October. These guys will do everything they can to try and make sure that this dystopian vision of a Quebec under siege by everybody who isn't named Tremblay will be, I guess, legislatively enshrined for years to come. I really hope, and dare I say, I really pray that won't happen, Aaron. But the thing is, in the meantime, think of how much time and effort and money and verbiage we're going to waste on yet another dog and pony show, courtesy of François Legault's Coalition Avenir Québec.
Jim, people would think, as you're putting it now, they'll try to ram through, as you just said, as much as they can before they're not in power anymore. So if that was the case, because they have a majority and they can do this, all those would have to be repealed by the next government, right? Absolutely.
Now, the good news is this is legislation, so it can be. Even the so-called Quebec Constitution, which you think would be a very important sort of, they call it the bill of all bills. It's a law, and it can be rescinded by the next government in the wink of an eye, in the time it takes to have a vote. But once again, this is it. This is another, how can I put it, hate-mongering, fear-mongering infomercial courtesy of the CAC for the people out in the regions who don't have a clue about what life is like outside of the regions. And you know what? It worked the last time. Is it going to work this time? Probably not, because I think they have run their course. They're now circling the bowl. But all that said, once again, waste of time, waste of money, waste of effort, and you'd think we have better things to do with our energy here in Quebec than deal with this kind of trivial nonsense.
A couple of things real quick. Number one, what did you think of that decision by this government, here we go again, not to go ahead and change that 33% hike for out-of-town students, right, out-of-province students coming to universities, and basically ignore a court ruling by just adding a couple more sentences to its explanation?
Well, as I say, it's the same contempt that this government has, first of all, that this government has shown for the judiciary, because we also have the remarkable spectacle of a justice minister who's basically trying to tell the courts what to do, which is absolutely unheard of. I don't know how they do things in whatever the hell country he comes from or whatever the hell nation he comes from, but in Canada, that's not how these things work. The other issue, of course, is that, as I say, they don't care. They totally don't care. And the really scary thing about the CAC isn't that they are so cynical that they think that, well, listen, we got all these seats, we must be doing something right, even though they managed to weasel into another supermajority thanks to our ridiculous first past the post system. What is really bothersome about this is these guys know what they're doing. These guys don't believe in any of this garbage. They know, however, that if they keep people scared, if they keep people nervous, if they keep people yelling at each other, they are going to spend that much more time in office. And it worked for 2 terms. It's not going to work for a 3rd term. But yeah, of course. And you know what? Expect even more, Aaron. God knows what's going to happen now. And don't forget, I'm not sure when the Bill 21 ruling is going to come down from the Supremes.
Yeah,
will it be before? Will it be before the election? Will it be? But you know what? Get ready for some really, even by CAC standards, over-the-top BS about the state of Quebec, its identity, and its language between now and the first Monday in October.
Jim, I don't want to run out of time. Last part about this. Marwa Risky, back, of course, in the National Assembly today, sitting as an independent. I'm a little kind of surprised by reaction from Marc Tanguay today when asked about having her back and joining the Liberal Party. And the answer was, well, we're all going to meet when we have a new leader in place. We're all going to discuss this together. Why is this such a difficult decision to make?
Because I think people don't really know what happened. And I think that I heard you talking to our good friend David Hurtel yesterday. And I got to tell you, Aaron, I concur with him insofar after 40 years in this business. I tell you, I hesitate to speculate on the contents of a document filed with the courts, not one syllable of which has been proved in court. And yet here we have, I would guess it's a leak to La Presse and to Radio-Canada from the I guess the legal team or something. Marois Risky, you recall, was not saying a word about any of this when it was going on. Remember, it was like, well, she's not explaining any of it. I just had to do what I had to do and this and that.
Yeah.
And I'm really not comfortable until I find out what's going on about commenting on it. But I got to tell you, I do not begrudge the Liberals their caution in dealing with this until they know just exactly what the heck is going on. And plus, as Monsieur Tanguay pointed out, we have to wait until we actually have a leader before we decide who gets in and who stays out.
By the way, Charles Milliard said the same thing to me when I asked that question as well. This kind of putting it off. He actually had met with Marois Risky. He said that when we spoke. But the idea of do we invite her back or not? So you're suggesting until we have all the information, which could take months, by the way, right?
Well, listen, first of all, she's not going to run again. She's made that clear.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, do you sit as an independent or do you sit as a Liberal MNA? Do you win your point or not? I don't know, but I think, with all due respect to Madame Risky, I think that whoever the next leader of the Quebec Liberal Party is, I think the rank and file of the Quebec Liberal Party will have a little more on their mind than the political designation of Marois Risky between now and October as they prepare for a general election.
All right. Jim, we'll leave it at that. I will leave you with a question that I started the show with today. You may have seen Jean Chrétien, Stephen Harper sitting around that fireside chat yesterday. It made me think about a poll that I just saw again, asking Canadians who they thought was the best prime minister this country has ever had. I asked Tom Mulcair that. I asked David Hertel that. Who would you say, Jim, is the best prime minister Canada ever had?
I would have to say, in my experience, obviously, would be Chrétien. I mean, he was just relentless in terms of being the prime minister. There were some real gaps, 95 referendum being one of them. But you know what? And once again, you're talking to a guy who didn't stint on his criticism in the past. But I got to tell you, Mark Carney's coming in really hot and fast as number 2.
Yeah. All right, we'll leave it at that. Jim, thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years.
And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.